Okay, hey everyone, I know it's been a little while since I posted a video, but it's coming up on a date in the year that is always incredibly painful emotionally in my family. We're coming up on the anniversary of the day that my stepdad, who is the man who raised me, he was my dad from the time I was 3 years old, and yeah, so it's coming up on the anniversary of him committing suicide, and I feel like in remembrance of him, I wanted to put another video out on you know, the stigma that is still around mental health problems and people reaching out for help. You know, it's still very significant in this world that people feel like it's embarrassing for them to, you know, admit that they are feeling depressed, or they're feeling anxiety, or they're feeling like, you know, they're having panic attacks, or, you know, even to more significant types of mental disorders, of them, you know, feeling like they're losing control, or they're hearing voices in their head, or you know, they're having these manic outbreaks where, you know, my dad suffered from bipolar disorder his entire life, and there were times where, you know, we lived in Maine, and he was walking to Boston, and that was during one of his manic episodes. Another one of his manic episodes, when we had first moved to Florida, he was trying to walk back to Maine, and these were just some of his, you know, high manic episodes that he had when I was younger. You know, his low lows were when he had attempted to commit suicide, and you know, the only time that he really got any help was when he had attempted to commit suicide, and it was mandatory for them to put him on a 5150 hold, which is a mandatory 72-hour psychiatric hold. That would be the only time that he would get any type of real significant help. There wasn't any, you know, therapy or you know, mandatory medications, and following up on his medications and whatnot. With that being said, you know, I had posted something a few weeks back. You know, you never think that a mass shooting can happen in the small town that you grew up in. I mean, Lewiston, Maine. There's a mass shooting. What? I mean, this is a little nowhere state, you know. I mean, it's a pretty big state, but things like that don't happen in Maine. They just don't. But that's the thing. It can happen anywhere. And the post that I had made specifically had said, when you look back at these mass shootings that occurred, the one component with the perpetrator in these cases is that they all have had some type of behavioral, mental health issue that has either gone undiagnosed, or it was diagnosed and they didn't get it properly treated. Or what happens with a lot of these patients is they start feeling better on the medications, and so they don't realize that they feel better because they're taking the medications. It's not like an antibiotic where you can stop taking it because you know, oh, my bottle's empty, I finished my course of medication, I feel better now, I don't need to keep taking my medication. That is where a lot of people fall off. I don't need to take this anymore because I feel better. Well, you feel better because the medication is making you feel better. Therefore, you need to continue taking it, because once it's out of your system, you're gonna start into that spiral again. You know, and I say this because from experience. Yes, I get that some of the medications out there for, the anti-anxiety medications, the depression medications, the bipolar medications, especially back in the day, when my dad was diagnosed, it was basically like lithium, and lithium puts patients into, it's not that they, are getting better, they don't care because they can't feel anything. And no one wants to sit around feeling that. That's no quality of life. But there are many more medications now. And yes, sometimes it takes a minute to figure out which medication is going to work for you. And I say this from personal experience. I wound up agoraphobic, and I had undiagnosed, untreated behavioral and mental disorders all of my life that went undiagnosed and untreated until I was 30 years old, and I wound up full-blown agoraphobic, could not leave my house. I thought that there was something physically wrong with me, and I went through a battery of tests. I had MRIs, I had CAT scans, I had x-rays, I had blood work, I had EKGs. Everything under the sun came back normal. Physically, ma'am, you are fine. There's nothing wrong with you physically. Okay? So now I need to go to a psychiatrist. I need to figure out what's going on. And within that 1 hour visit with the psychiatrist, I learned that my anxiety I have had since I was a little girl. I hadn't had a proper night's sleep in, I think at that point it was well over 10 years. I hadn't had a perfect night, a good night's sleep in well over 10 years. And if you don't sleep well, your mental capacity is diminished. And I found out that the agoraphobia was the anxiety that I've always had. I've had since I was little, like little. And when I think back on it, I can remember having like minor panic attacks when I was a little girl and feeling like I couldn't breathe. I would feel like there was something, and I referred to it as I feel like there's a banana stuck in my throat. And that was because I was having a panic attack, but I was like 5 years old when this happened. You don't know what it is. Your parents are like, you're just being stupid. Go, you just go to bed. It'll go away. There's nothing wrong with you. So what had happened when I turned 30, I was being forced to go to an event in Maine that my subconscious was saying, you don't want to, this is bad. This is bad. It was triggering trauma in me. And we were getting ready to leave Florida to go and get on the plane, and all of a sudden I'm feeling sick to my stomach, just sick. I'm like, oh my God, I think I've got a stomach bug. We get up to Maine, and it's like worse. It's worse. I'm sweating. I'm nauseous. I can't function. I tried to just go to the mall that I grew up going to all the time, just hanging out. Tried taking my youngest there while the rest of the family was off doing something, just to go walk around this little teeny tiny dinky mall. Couldn't do it. I couldn't do it physically. I could not do it. And it turns out that my subconscious, and this is where the brain is just so fascinating, my subconscious was screaming at me and was triggering this anxiety within me, within these repressed memories, and just morphed my anxiety into full-blown agoraphobia. I couldn't leave my house for 3.5 months. 3.5 months it took me to be able to get this diagnosed. It took me 1 hour sitting with a psychiatrist and just discussing, what had gone on from my childhood up to that point in my life, what was going on when all of these symptoms began. And I started on anti-anxiety medication. I started on Effexor, and I started on a low dose and then got titrated up to a higher dose. Within 2 weeks, I was able to leave my house again and not have that circle of anxiety just building up within me to where I was in a full-blown panic attack thinking about leaving my house. Within 2 weeks of starting this medication, I was good. And thank goodness that I took the initiative and I saw a psychiatrist, because had I continued on that path, it would have been incredibly not only damaging to me but to my children as well, because I was not in a good place. So yes, undiagnosed, undermedicated, improperly medicated, improperly maintained psychiatric visits, the stigma of being ashamed to seek help and to see a therapist, all of that. When you read back on the psychological histories of all of these people that commit these heinous mass shootings, and I'm not trying to make an excuse for it at all by saying this, but the common denominator in all of them is the mental health. We need to stop making people feel embarrassed. You're not crazy because you have mental health issues. You're not insane. You have a disease within your brain that you need to have treatment for. You need to see a doctor for. If you had diabetes, you'd get treatment for that. You'd take your insulin every day like you're supposed to. It needs to be treated and thought of the same way as something like diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. These are all things that we're not embarrassed to go and talk to the doctor about. People aren't embarrassed to go and talk to the doctor about fibromyalgia, having, chronic pain. Why do we make it so difficult for people to seek out mental help? And our, insurances, they've gotten better with covering, mental health benefits. But the problem is that a lot of people who have these problems don't have either the job that has the type of health insurance that covers it, or they can't afford the health insurance that covers it. And let's, be honest, sometimes the copays are outrageous. There are some mental health facilities that are, out there now that work with, the major part of our society that either doesn't have health insurance, or, they can't seek mental health because of the copays and their deductibles and everything else. So I just, on the anniversary of my dad's suicide, I wanted to just kind of share a little video about, what I've been through, what I've suffered with, what my dad suffered with. He suffered a lot, and he was a good man. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to know that until very much later in life. So I'm gonna cut this part of the video here. I'm gonna come back with more about my dad in part 2. Bye, guys.